Hi, my name's Miguel De Angel, and I've been getting a lot of questions about how to create the brushes that I use in my demos. Um, so I'll show how to do that here. I'm using Photoshop, and these instructions should work for Photoshop 7 and up. Let's see. Uh, I work at 300 dots per inch at 11 inches by 15 inches most of the time. The reason this is important is because anytime I talk about size of the brushes, if you work larger, my size is going to look smaller on your page. If you work smaller, my brush size is going to look bigger. So you can always adjust the size. But so to start off, I'm going to work on my ink, what I call my inking brush. Okay. So for my inking brush, I select a standard hard edge brush and set it to 10 points. Okay, 10 points. Okay, now it is fully 100% opaque. I don't change the opacity on here. On the brush, the main thing I'm doing is just turning shape dynamics on it to turn the size will change according to the pressure. Okay, so 100% opaque and size set to pressure. Now, what does that do? Skinny little line if I don't press on my tablet, thick line if I press. Obviously, if I have a bigger brush, I can get even more variation from the pressure. Okay? So, once you have the right settings on a brush, under the brushes palette, you'll want to click on that new brush, and it'll basically save all those settings. You can name it whatever you want, click OK, and then you will see that that is going to show up at the bottom of your list there. And there's my brush. Okay, now for what I call my sketching brush, okay, I work a little bit bigger, somewhere between 20 and 30, 20 and 40, 20 to 40 points. So it's fatter. Okay, the opacity is set to, under other dynamics down here, okay, is set to pressure. Okay, so now not only is it going to get thick and thin according to my pressure, but I can get light opacity, semi-transparent brushes if I don't press very hard. Okay, so I like that because it works more like a pencil. You can do thin lines as you're trying to figure out a character's size and shape and proportion and all that kind of things. So that's why I use opacity set to pressure. Okay, and so opacity set to pressure. Okay, and that's my sketching brush, and then you go back in here and click on the new, and you can call that sketching brush. Okay, and then once you've done that, you're going to find that in your palette, so you can access it and get to it anytime you want. Okay, now what I use as a painting brush is a little bit trickier. Let me delete all of this. Okay, there's a few more settings to that brush. So first thing is you're going to select your size, okay, and you can set the size here. Okay, I have this one set to 55. Okay, shape dynamic, notice it's also set to pressure for size, but I have a minimum on the size. It won't get 1 point thin. I have it somewhere around 25%, so it doesn't get totally skinny. Okay, there's a setting called dual brush, uh, and I have this texture set for it. Okay, it's just a default brush that comes with Photoshop, as I use that as a texture, and I give that a point size a little bit bigger than my brush. It's currently set to 58. Okay, color dynamics. Now this brush is set to work a little bit like watercolor, so I have it hue jitter, saturation jitter, and brightness jitter um, set to a little bit over 5% and under 10, and the purity is set to 0. Um, the foreground background jitter is set to 46, so it's gonna mix between the foreground color and the background color. So let's see what that looks like with black and white as my colors. You can see sometimes it's very dark black, sometimes it's white, and it ranges in between those. Now for black and white it doesn't look very good, okay, but when you have colors closer together, let's say let's do two reds, okay, you get a little bit closer together. Now you can still see clearly where one brush is and the other one, when one starts the other one ends, by the color difference. So another thing that I do is I set my opacity to somewhere between 50 and 70%. Okay. Now what that does is, as you'll see here, is that the difference between one circular brush, hard edge brush, and the other is not as noticeable, but there's enough color variation from those jitter settings that it looks a little bit more like natural watercolors. Okay, and that texture we did, you can see that the edges get a paper looking texture. Okay, finally, wet edges is a setting, makes the brush is a little bit lighter on the body of it, on the main part of it, and a little bit darker on the outside. And as you build on it, you can get darker and darker and darker and build on it towards the full purity of the color. So in building, you can really try and get some shading. Okay, I usually have a dark color and a light color, and I can switch back and forth between the two to try and lighten a picture, so I can render this way. Okay, I add some dark here, some light there. Okay, and you can slowly build up some tonality to that. Okay, and that's essentially my what I call the watercolor brush. And then once again, once you have the settings like you want it, you can save it, call it watercolor brush, click save, and then you can pull it down from your settings there. Okay, well, that's it for the way I do brushes. Happy photoshopping, and if anybody has questions that you'd like demonstrated in Photoshop, just drop me an email and I'll be glad to do a demo for you.